Welcome to Balm and the Burnout, a podcast for cross-sector people and professionals navigating personal and systemic burnout. Whether you're a doctor, educator, farmer, caregiver, or simply trying to survive under the weight of broken systems, this podcast is here to offer solace, strategy, and solidarity. All right, welcome back to Balm and the Burnout, everyone. I'm Megan Hadley, and today I can't wait to bring an old friend onto the show, Carl Atiya Swanson. Carl is a creative with an MBA, a third culture kid, and a practical optimist. Carl's the founder of Cast Consulting, a firm focusing on strategy, facilitation, and communications in the social, arts, and culture sectors. Through CAST, Carl has worked with the City of Minneapolis Arts and Cultural Affairs Department, Minnesota CDFI Coalition, Arts Midwest, Initiative Foundation, Salzburg Global, and others. Swanson has worked as the executive director of the National Independent Venue Foundation and as associate director at Springboard for the Arts. As a writer, his poems have been published by Thin Air Magazine, Compass Rose Literary Journal, Crooked Arrow Press, Meal Magazine, and the Hennepin History Museum, while his arts and culture writing has been published in Spin, City Pages, The Onion AV Club, Minneapolis Art, and other outlets. He has been a member of the theater companies Lamb Lays with Lion and Umbrella Collective, and served on the boards of Catalyst Music Twin Cities, Young Nonprofit Professionals Network Twin Cities, and Dissonance, advocating for mental health and wellness and creativity. Carl holds a BA in studio art from the University of Southern California and an MBA from the University of St. Thomas Opus College of Business. My, oh my, you've been busy in your career, Carl, and we're just so happy that you're here with us chatting today.
Thanks. I'm delighted to be here. And like I said earlier, it's always a good reminder that, oh, yeah, I've done all those things whenever I hear somebody read my bio out loud, because I can often get like, what is the thing that I'm doing right now? Tunnel vision. So it's nice to have that perspective. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And the more youth that I work with, the more they begin to feel that's normalized too. The more stories
Mm,
they hear of people that, it all weaves together eventually. You don't quite know
hmm
how it does at first.
Yeah. I got a chance to co-teach a class at the University of St. Thomas, undergrad Opus College of Business this last semester. And it was really heartening to see both groups of kids who knew what they were going to do next, and then also people who were just like super open-ended, and to just be encouraging to them that find good ways to spend your time and energy
Mhm.
and attention, because those are resources that you're not getting back. Then it will all come together in the end. You don't have to beat yourself up about what your next step is right now.
I love that so much. What a beautiful message from a mentor, an elder for them. It,
Don't call me an elder yet.
I think you can be an elder at
It's,
any age.
that's true. I do call myself an elder millennial statesman every once in a while when I have to generationally define myself.
There we go. There we
Yeah.
go. It kind of reminds me of folks who do astrology readings on like at the end of life and how much it's
hmm
just like you've actually done all the things. This is kind of anticlimactic now.
Now you go quietly into that good night, because that's what you got right now. Yeah.
100%. Oh my goodness. Well, okay, let me get to my list here, or we'll go off on some
Yeah.
really fun tangents. But can you share a moment when you felt really present lately?
Yeah. I try and find little things throughout the day. And I was just watching a video this morning of the actor Richard E. Grant, who his wife was dying, and she told him to find a pocket full of happiness in every day. And I love that phrase. Yesterday I was driving. I had to run to BS to pick up something for a school project, and there was a heron in a pond that I was driving past, and I just pulled the car over and stopped and looked at this heron for 5 minutes, and that was great. That was terrific.
Yeah, it's that time of year to watch the birds for sure. Thank you for
hmm
illuminating that moment for us. I would love to talk about health and well being. I could talk about this all day long, but what's important to share about your frame on health and well-being for yourself or some of that organizational health work you do.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the first thing that I have to go back to is that I am a person in recovery. I am 17 years sober from drugs and alcohol at this point, and that is a constant practice and a frame for approaching life and the way that I live. And the thing that I maybe cherish most about that recovery process is that you have to commit to believing that change is possible, right? That you can make a change in yourself, and that is the first place where you can affect change. And so if you tend to that and take care of that, then you can also affect change in other places. But the garden in your mind, the way that you cultivate your own habits and body, these are critical ways to support showing up in the world. And I'll say my own recovery practice has been weaving. I'm not an AA person. There are like hundreds of ways to get through the day, so choose one and find a way. And for a long time, it was just finding other people who were sober, finding other people to have conversations with, just being public and accountable to it. But over the last few years, I've done more meditation and Buddhist inspired work and have joined a recovery Dharma practice, which is a recovery practice that centers Buddhist teachings. It's not a religious gathering, but it centers Buddhist teachings as a way to sit with the suffering of addiction and to recognize it and find healthy and skillful ways to move through it. And I think that one of the things that's most important about that for me is that it really does underscore that nothing is ever finished. You don't reach a done state in things. You simply live in the moment and you live through the moment and try and figure out what the next best thing to do is. And that I find that very reassuring in a way that I don't have to like check a thing off of a box, but that I can keep on coming back to it and try and be better at it over and over again. Yeah, that is, I think, the sort of first and foremost thing. And I'll say, I had a mental image of myself for a long time, especially as a younger person, as a younger creative theater maker, that I was a chaotic person. And there is an element of that, but also the practice of recovery and the practice of being a parent and the practice of running my own business actually means that I have turned into a surprisingly disciplined person in a lot of ways, which it was a shock to me as much as it is to anybody else. But that realization of repetition over time, actually creating habits, I think is really powerful in a good way and also can be in a very bad way. So you got to check what those habits you're cultivating are and how you're approaching the work. But that first and foremost is the frame with which I approach how to stay healthy and grounded and well in this life.
Thank you so much. There's so much wisdom to what you're talking about, even as you starting with that personal change and committing to yourself and saying, if I can make changes possible elsewhere, and what a daily reminder that it is possible if you can stick to your commitment to yourself and your family. It's only upwards from there in many ways.
And I think that it's helpful. We want to talk about burnout, and that's what we're here to talk about. But I mean, a lot of burnout is because of the frustrations of you as an individual, or I'll say, put it me framing, is me as an individual trying to deal with the structures of the world and the things that are frustrating in the world around me, which I have probably only limited resources or limited access to change some of those fundamental structures. And so it is the classic AA, but like knowing what it is that I can change and where I can make that change, and also giving myself a bunch of grace to step away from things that I can't actually change. That's really helpful in knowing where to conserve energy and where to put energy versus it's imperative to be angry and upset about the things that are wrong with the world and also incredibly exhausting. And so there is a balance that you have to strike with that.
Definitely. How much you're engaging in kind of where that locus of control is, right? If you're spending all of your energy on something that's out of your control, how is that serving you or the goals that you have?
Yeah.
Well, I've talked a lot about the work you're doing. What feels relevant to pull in the circle here around how that shows up?
I will say professionally, the work that I'm doing often revolves around like organizations and leadership teams and boards, and how do we share common values? How do we articulate those values? I think that that's a big part of the work that I try to do inside of organizations, is to help people push to what do we actually mean when we say the words that we share together? What do we actually mean in practice? What does it look like? Everybody can say we value integrity, we value honesty, or whatever the case may be inside of those organizations. But what do you actually like mean in that situation? And that I find is really helpful in digging down to like what are then the habits and the processes and procedures that you need to put in place to really live into those values or to really support the people in organizations. I'm a big believer in this notion that an organization is not a thing in and of itself. An organization is just a collection of people. And so you have to look out for the people, and you have to create systems that are responsive to the people inside that organization. You're never going to get rid of stresses. You're never going to get rid of all of the work is hard often. You shouldn't shy away from that, but you can try and mitigate the negative impacts on people by creating more responsive systems, by creating timelines that have slack and grace in them, by creating, family-friendly environments where you can bring your dog or your kid into the office, or you can have flexibility around where you work. Those are all really important things. I think a lot about the poet Tish Jones. I was at a conference once and Tish was speaking, and she said, if you treat the people good, the outcome will be good. And I think about that a lot when it comes to like organizational structure and how we're putting things together.
Yeah, really centering the experience of the people that
Mm-hmm.
make up the organization. What you're describing just reminds me a lot about health coaching. So I can't
Mm-hmm.
help but make that parallel, right? And I've never thought that the health coaching process is actually unique to health coaching. We're saying it's a frame, and we're
Mm-hmm.
using it often in healthcare. But right, doing that work of identifying values and then
Yeah.
trying to see how our values aligning our action so that we can show up in the way that we say that we want to show up. And that can really build the habits and help design the structures based on the
Yeah.
need and the values. So I love seeing that parallel and knowing that that's happening and all these incredible organizations and at the leadership level. I mean, you're very much needed. So like, thank you for doing that
I
work with
mean,
people.
this is the thing, is that in the trying to put all the pieces together and trying to make a life that makes sense to me, I often, when you read the bio, like it doesn't necessarily all read together. Like, what is this like
Hmm.
arts and culture guy doing in these like nonprofit lending spaces and doing political, or like what is all that? How does all that work together? But to me, when I set out to just run my own business and do my own thing, the question was, it had been this building series of questions, is like, where can I be useful in the communities where I think that there is important work to be done? And whether it is with an individual artist or a cultural organization, or with organizations that are looking to try and move money into communities that have been undercapitalized or disenfranchised, that is for me all about what is the creative and connective and supportive world that I want to see. And if I can put the kind of synthesizing creative capacities that I have to use in those contexts, that feels like a good place to be. It feels like an important place to be in these times, because Lord knows these times are these timing all over and all around us right now.
I know, it's so true. It's like I've been thinking about just the timing of these recordings and just
Mm-hmm.
being like, this feels like very historic moment. These times, like you said, are these times, and there's always like you think COVID was a time. You
As
sent me that reel to watch from last year, and that time post 9/11 and like
mm-hmm.
2008. Those are times, right? So yeah, what is unique do you think about the work we're doing to support reduction of burnout in
Mm-hmm.
this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say in these times, and I think it's really true, like we are living through monumental and consequential times, but then I also put it on like a time scale. And
Hmm.
if someone was born in the mid 1930s, they lived through a depression, a world war, a massive industrialization, the civil rights movement, and stagflation by the time they were my age, 41, right? Like these times are apparently just the times that we live in. And so I think the work that we can do and should be doing is around what is the what is the creative and humane way to build these systems that we want to see, and to build in the constructs that we have and with the technology that we have, to work both in and around that, and also to push against it when it is inhumane or when it is not serving the balance between humans and nature. And when we are actively destroying the planet, then we need to actively work against that. And we need to actively put people and their relationship to ecology back in the center of the conversation. And so, yeah, there's something comforting to me and about this notion that human beings have carried on for a long time. I especially felt this acutely when I first became a parent, and I was like super scared. Like, what are we even doing here? How are we going to keep this tiny thing alive? And then I would think that there have been literally billions of other human beings who have come before us, and somehow we're still here. And so I just need to do my best. It'll probably work out in the end run. Um, and I do feel that way about sort of the work that we try and do with people, with organizations. It is, what are we doing? How are we doing our best to make sure that we're taking care of each other? How are we building in that in an intentional and systemic way to counterbalance and push against those other systems that are inhumane? Yeah, how are we giving ourselves grace in doing that work?
Mm. Yes. I can only say yes to that. I'm just like, I was really feeling you on the parenthood thing. I was like,
Oh
oh,
yeah, I
yes.
mean, you know,
In the
yeah.
depths of three nature world. It's so good though. It reminds
Hmm.
us we're alive, and that's, what
Yeah.
I think is unique about this moment too, is like we actually just have so much to fight for.
Hmm.
And like you said, seeing the inhumane, seeing the imbalance, recognizing we're not only supporting the people, we're also supporting the sustainability of the people and this business, which also happens to mean the sustainability of the planet. And that
Yeah.
hasn't been in business world ecology for back in the day. So here we are trying to center that as much as we do. And yeah, maybe that's just another question, is how do you bring your own values and make sure they don't get intermixed, but you still have that
Hmm.
pushback influence when you can?
Yeah, I feel really fortunate to have been able to work both inside of organizations as an employee, and then also for with clients who I agree with. And so we have like a shared and common understanding and shared goal. And if you are not in that situation, I think that's part of like figuring out where you have agency to either change or push back. And that's been a part of the work inside of those organizations and with the organizations I work with. Because we are aligned on values, what that gives us is the capacity to then push back sort of on the bigger picture and say that and try and change sort of more structural things. But if you were inside of an organization where your values aren't aligned, that really is one of those places where, you know, do I have the agency to change this? Is it worth my time and energy and capacity and strength to try and change this? Are there other places where I could spend time and energy? Are there other places that are better aligned? And trying to find where the answers to those questions are, so that you can either stay and make the change that you think is possible and needed, or go and try and find something else to do. Ricardo Levins Morales, the artist and organizer from South Minneapolis, has this whole series around community organizing and kinds of power, so inside and outside power, and then sunlight power and moonlight power. So sunlight power is like direct. This is, we are casting the light. And moonlight power is like, I am reflecting this back and making other changes. And I think that that's like understanding where you are relative to a power structure, or relative to something that might be challenging your values, is useful in knowing how to approach trying to change it, or trying to change your relationship to it, try to change where you're set up so that you can make the shifts you want to see.
That is so good. Thank you for bringing in that artist and that frame, sunlight and moonlight. I'm going to really explore that because I'm just like, wow, that's so
Hmm.
good. How do you wrestle with those questions? Like, what does your practice look like for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's one, I mean, I'll say this from a like time capacity question, right? Because I am human and have only so many hours in the day. And the thing that I think a lot about, and this goes back to my own actual sobriety journey, is really around like, where where can I make change? Like, where do I have that immediate impact? And I'll say that what the reason politically that ties back is that I was drinking post 9/11 when I was in college and partying in college. And I say this jokingly, but it is also very serious. That the reelection of George W. Bush in 2004 was one of those like catalytic moments where I had spent time protesting against the war in Iraq and trying to get John Kerry elected and change what I saw as this disastrous course of the country in pointless and bloody invasions and a terrible, terrible political move. And it was that reelection that, to me, as a 20-year-old at that point, was like, well, I'm just going to throw my hands up in the air and who cares? And I'm just going to go. And I dove headfirst into partying. And a couple years later, that really became a problem. And I'm grateful that I have friends and family who helped me get sober. But I think a lot about that, like where did I give up agency around change and where did I give up a sense of power around change? And so part of that process for me is like, well, how much time do I have? What are my energy resources like? And then where are the closest places that I can help do important things? And for me right now, that is in trying to be the best parent that I can be. It is in some local organizing and support, and it is in the clients that I work with and helping them do good work or helping, the network of folks do good work. I think about that a lot. And there are times where like I beat myself up where I'm like, I should be doing more things. I feel like that's a very natural position for somebody who wants bigger and better things to be in. And so I have to catch myself in those moments and, take a little inventory of what are the things that I could do, what are the things that I can be doing. Often when I feel run down like that, the little catchphrase that I live my life off of like little catchphrases and things that'll help me like stay grounded or focused. But this one is, if I'm feeling run down and not like I'm doing anything worthwhile, I will ask myself, what can I do for future Carl to make life easier for him? Because I like that guy and I want to stick around for him. That like, if I'm at like 20% capacity, like what is the list that I can make, or what is the email that I can write, or what is the walk that I can take to like rejuvenate and replenish. But that like process of assessment is a big part of just how I try and prioritize and then try and stay focused in the work.
Definitely. And it sounds like a practice you can turn to every day, multiple times a day. It sounds like you're
Yeah.
checking in with your time, you're checking in with your energy. So like these are two resources you have in and of yourself. And then you're also saying like, okay, my circle of influence, like where is
Hmm.
the easiest, closest place that I can live out my values and have this better life? And seeing, oh, these people I live with that happen to
Yeah.
be my family, let's work on that, and how valuable that time is, and that local organizing. So what a very simple and profound practice you've built.
It is the little p political, the people in the politics versus the big P, whatever the structural, whatever the party politics might be. But the little p people politics is a really critical thing for me to come back to.
Yeah, so good. All right, so I would also like to talk about, before we wind down,
Hmm.
just the idea of alchemy and how the hard things in our life, you've talked about this, right? How you're kind
Hmm.
of literally digesting them and processing them to turn it into something that's workable. But how do you see this alchemy, especially in the work that you do with organizations? What happens?
Yeah. I think that we have a limited attention resource, right? Our time is inherently limited. Our attention, we only have so much of it. And so where we spend that time and attention is where we make change possible, where we make realizations happen. And I find that a lot of the work that I do, especially in organizations, is to help them realize the things that they're already doing, but they don't have words for or they don't have a structure for yet. And that process of naming and that process of like understanding intuitive relationships in a more structured way, that to me feels really alchemical, feels real magical because it lets you say, oh, I've been doing all these things and I've been synthesizing them and like organizationally we've been doing all this stuff into what we've been building up. And the ability to say like, here's where we are now means that you can then stand on that so that you can start the next sequence of things that you want to build off of. And so that naming and that understanding feels like sort of the transmogrification of the work. I wrote down, because I knew you were going to ask this question, but one of my favorite little poems is by Mary Oliver, which is the Instructions for Living a Life. It's 3 lines: pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And that, to me, like, fundamentally, whatever else you do on a big or a tiny scale, like paying attention, being astonished, and then telling about it feels like the magic.
Ooh, you are the second guest who's quoted Mary Oliver.
It's because she's magical and people love her. She's very, very smart.
It's so good. I know I've read that one, but it's been a while. So thanks for bringing that up. I mean, I think the other thing that I'm hearing from you is the capacity to witness the good that's already happening. Because so often we have that negativity bias around like, oh, we need to fix something, we need to do something about this, when really it's just, hey, what's actually already happening here? How could we name that, view it, systematize it, witness it? Doing that work is huge for people. This is what we do in health coaching all the time. We're just reflecting what's already happening for them, but being that space and showing it and kind of alchemizing it, right? Making it into something you can look back at. And make into something new. Like that is magic.
Yeah. Witness is huge. And I find there's like nothing more personally magical than like being witnessed to, like to both do it for somebody and then also the rush of joy and satisfaction that I get when someone's like, oh, you're observant. Like, I try. Thank you. That makes me so happy that you say that.
Like, actually, yes, I've been honing that skill for years just for this moment. Thank you.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, it's a skill that shouldn't go unnoticed, right? Your capacity to pay that attention for people and connect the dots for them, be that third party person to just hop in and see things as they are and hold it up for them to look at. I think that's really good work. Yeah. Well, if there was one takeaway that our listeners could hold with them after hearing this, what would you hope that might be?
I hope that you find moments in your day to pay attention to yourself and to just appreciate all the places you've been and where you can go, and to use that as building blocks for the other things you want to build. And like I said, like I rely on like little phrases in my life. I rely on song lyrics all the time, and some years, sometimes just have a song that keeps coming back at the thing. And so my song for right now is from Fiona Apple from her Extraordinary Machine record, and it is the Extraordinary Machine song, which is, the chorus goes, "Be kind to me or treat me mean. I'll make the most of it. I'm an extraordinary machine." And so you are all extraordinary machines out there wandering around the world. So let's put all these pieces together and do extraordinary things.
And it speaks so much to that resilience and capacity to see ourselves for who we are and hold some respect for that.
Yeah.
And move on from the things that aren't for us.
Yeah. And the capacity to take it in, to realize that it's not, or it is, and to move in that direction. Yeah. It's also got a killer clarinet line from John Bryan, so go listen to it and make you happy.
I will. I certainly will. Well, thank you again so much, Carl, for your time today. This was a lovely conversation. We'll be sharing your website, castconsulting.co, your personal website with your writing and things, carlatiyaswanson.com, and your social media handles. So check those out in the show notes. Otherwise, thank you again so much, and we'll look forward to seeing your work evolve.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. Balm and the Burnout is a listener-supported podcast made possible by my work at Harvest Health and Wellbeing. If you'd like to support this project or contribute to a community scholarship, you can leave a tip on Venmo at HHW-LLC. Thanks for listening, and see what you can restore and alchemize today.